Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Matty here, and today we're talking even more deck lists. So in yesterday's video, I basically talked about what I believed were the best decks to be playing in Pokemon TCG Pocket for this new ranked season. And while I do think those decks yesterday are at least at the beginning of this metagame at the very top, there are a lot of other decks that are brand new and also really strong. So it's still very early in the metagame, and today we have 10 more deck lists that I think are all actually really strong. And again, it's really early, so all of the decks in yesterday's video might fall out of the top 10, best decks, and then a lot of the decks in this video might end up also finding their way into the top 10 best decks for ranked mode and in tournaments. So keep that in mind, but I wanted to showcase a bunch of other decks that I thought were really good. So let's go ahead and do that here in this video. Before we do that though, don't forget to like and subscribe and stay tuned for all of the Pokemon TCG Pocket coverage that we will be doing on the channel here. Definitely a really good place for you to go to know what's best and what's not. So you're going to want to stay tuned. A lot of videos coming up. Also, shout out to the Discord server. Link to join will be down in the description below. They hooked it up with a bunch of different deck lists and ideas that we're going to be looking at here in this video. So there it is. Let's get right into it, guys. Okay. So the first deck that we're going to take a look at is actually Incineroar. I think a lot of people in the previous video were asking me, where's Incineroar? Where is Incineroar? And I do think Incineroar is very good. It's again a fire type stage 2 Pokemon, 180 HP is really high, and we have that 1 energy attack. So going first, technically we can Fire Fang, and that is 30 damage and it burns your opponent. And burn is actually 20 damage, whereas poison is only 1 damage, or 10 damage rather. So it's really strong, like 50 damage immediately. Also, the Litten and Torracat have Heat Tackle, which damages yourself, and then that again will boost up your Scarred Charged Smash attack for 3 fire energies. Incineroar is just a little bit awkward in that energy curve because you kind of are forced to attack twice with like Fire Fang unless you're going second, and then on your, well, you still, but realistically, you're going to attack, and then attack with the big attack. So it's going to take a little while for Incineroar to get fully set up. That's the only awkward part about it. However, we could pair some extra damage modifiers in here. We are pairing it with Rocky Helmet, but realistically, Incineroar is really good at destroying some of those basic Pokemon and getting some really early damage off on the board. But the one thing with Incineroar, and a big reason why I've sort of haven't put it really high on my lists, is because I think it's too committed to just that plain strategy. Most of the stage 2 decks that we see are really good early on in this format are basically stage 2 Pokemon that are strong, but paired with other Pokemon that are also good. So this is actually the Incineroar deck that I like the most, that I've played the most, and the one that I enjoy, the one I think is actually probably the best right now, which is actually with Turtonator. And the new Turtonator is really funny. It's a basic 120 HP Pokemon, so a lot of HP on this thing. It's got a retreat cost of 3, so you're not moving out of that active spot. Well, I guess you could, to be fair, but typically you're not. And then we have the Fire Spin attack, which does 90 damage, and then you discard 1 energy from Turtonator. The whole idea here is that we are playing Kiawe to pair with Turtonator, which basically allows us to attach 2 extra energies to it, and then our turn ends. Really good going first or on our first turn. It allows us to set up Turtonator basically immediately. And then the whole idea here is with Turtonator, because it discards 1 energy every time we attack, we're not really able to set up our bench Pokemon if we want to attack after turn with Turtonator. But on our second turn, doing 90 damage is certainly really good, especially if our opponent doesn't find their rare candy combination, so we might be able to take KOs that way. Again, we also have Rocky Helmet, so the damage from Turtonator plus the Rocky Helmet damage should add up to enough for us to finish up that KO with Incineroar later down the line with Fire Fang. So that's kind of the flow of this deck. It doesn't operate super well, like if you lead Kitten and you don't have like the rare candy Incineroar combo, or if you do lead with Turtonator and you don't draw into Kiawe. It can definitely be a little bit awkward in that sense, but we do have a lot of HP, so we should be fairly safe from that point of view. And again, we also have Incineroar. So I think that Turtonator is honestly, at least at the moment right now, the best sort of single prize partner to pair with Incineroar. We see this with Decidueye, we see this with Solgaleo. You kind of want to pair them with multiple non-EX Pokemon so that you can kind of force your opponent to go through 1 or 2 of those single prize Pokemon before you then go into your kind of big EX Pokemon to finish things off. That's really what we see most of the time. So there's not too many options to do that with Incineroar, and Turtonator I think is actually the best one right now, which is actually pretty funny. So here is Turtonator, and I actually think that this format right now is kind of leaning in that direction. I think early on, people were really committed to just sort of playing a bunch of these, like just kind of like straight up only playing these stage 2 attacking Pokemon and hoping that we go like rare candy, we go into them. But I think as time's going to go on, we're going to see that this format is really all about these strong stage 2 Pokemon that are EX Pokemon that have like really good non-EX Pokemon that we kind of just pair with them, and we hope that we can kind of flow nicely and go a couple single price Pokemon into a big EX at the end. I think that's sort of what the best decks in the format are shaping up to look like. Things like Skarmory, Solgaleo, Decidueye has Lurantis, or even Meowscarada decks with Tsareena. There's a lot of the examples, to be fair, but I think that that's sort of how things are going, and I think that Turtonator actually feels the bill. So this is my Incineroar list. Again, you could just play straight Incineroar. I've actually seen people pair it with Charizard EX, so just playing all of the Fire-type EX Pokemon. It's not a bad card. I just didn't feel as confident in it like early on for me to include it in my top 10 or like my top ranked decks video, but I do think it's definitely one of the best new decks to come from Celestial Guardian, so I wanted to include it. Here it is, guys, for all the people asking where was Incineroar in the previous video. Here it is. And also, if you haven't seen my yesterday's video, definitely go check that out. Okay, so next up is going to be something that kind of looks like a meme at first glance, but I promise you I am not memeing with this list. This is purely single prize water with Greninja, with Bruxish, and with Pyukumuku. So a really, really funny deck that actually looks hilarious at first glance, but this is actually like a totally real deck list, and it actually is really good. I think that Pyukumuku, I'm just going to call it Pyuku, I think is probably easier to say. It's got a great ability. It acts as sort of a Druddigon that is just really good and exceptionally much better in water type decks, but pairs really well with Greninja and with Bruxish. So the whole point for this deck is that we want to lead off with Pyukyu, and then hopefully, our opponent attacks us, takes a bunch of damage. We are playing Giant Cape, but that's mainly for Greninja and also Bruxish. They're going to take some damage from the Pyukyu, and then we go into Bruxish, perhaps to finish off some KOs, while all the while kind of sprinkling more damage with the Water Shuriken Greninja. So this is actually a really, really decent deck, and I actually think that it flows a little bit better than you might expect it to with Guzma, with Cyrus as well, gives us much more control. Basically, Bruxish pairs really well with Greninja, with Cyrus, so we can kind of target a bench Pokemon, bring it up, and attack with Bruxish. So all of our Pokemon have low energy in their attack cost, which means we don't have to play Misty. So I really like this list, and again, it's new here because I think that Pyukyu's a really strong card, but I think all of these cards have great synergy. Now, is this going to be like the best deck of the format? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily on the level as maybe some of the other decks we've taken a look at in the last few days, which is again why it wasn't on yesterday's video. But I do think this is really good, and I think that there are a lot of additional opportunities for us to play this card that I think we should probably consider. So I really like Pyukyu, and I like it pairing with Greninja and Bruxish. And Greninja in general, as we're going to see it again later in this video, is probably one of the more underrated Pokemon in the game right now with Rare Candy. It's so much more consistent to get that Greninja up early. The potential to get Greninja out on turn 2 is a really big deal, especially since Bruxish can attack with 2 energy. So if we are leading with Bruxish, we can potentially just Water Shuriken and then attack with Second Strike all on our second turn, potentially doing, up to 90 damage with that combination, which is really good. So I like this deck list. It's much, much better than I think most people would expect it to be. It's not a meme. It's really, really good. And yeah, I love Pyukyu, so I wanted to include at least one deck list with it. Next up is going to be Lurantis with Decidueye. So Decidueye's in a really odd spot. I think that it is certainly one of the strongest cards in the entire game, but I think a lot of people are struggling with what's the best way to play Decidueye really is. And I don't think that that's, a big surprise, truthfully. I think that it's actually a really nuanced card, and there's a lot of great partner Pokemon to pair with it. The grass type in general is really, really interesting. However, I actually think that Lurantis, I've said this a bunch of times about Decidueye because I made it a video with Inteleon with it, which I thought was really good, but because of Oricorio and just the way that the format was going, I didn't think that Greninja paired with Decidueye, maybe would end up being the best deck or the most well-positioned version of Decidueye in the format. And then I saw a bunch of people playing Meowscarada, and I had a ton of success with Meowscarada and Decidueye, but then it's also kind of seeming that maybe Tsareena is even a better partner with Meowscarada than Decidueye is, but Decidueye is still a really good card, so where are we going to put with Decidueye? Lurantis might actually end up being that exact deck. So again, I haven't talked about this in the last couple of days. I've talked about Decidueye a lot, but this is the first time I'm bringing up Lurantis. We'll have to see exactly what the best way to play Decidueye ends up being. But one thing is for certain is that there's a lot of partners and a lot of options, and Decidueye itself is a very, very strong card. So I really like Lurantis, and again, this kind of pairs into that strategy where, maybe we want to go, Lurantis into Lurantis, deal 20 damage if you don't know, Petal Blizzard, 1 energy on a stage 1 Pokemon, very, very good. We can use this attack going first, so a really, really strong card here. We can do 20 damage to all of our opponent's Pokemon, tons of spread damage. We could even do it 2, 3, maybe even 4 times with 2 Lurantises before we have to go into into Decidueye, with Poison Barb as well, dealing even more additional damage to whatever Pokemon attacks our active Pokemon, and then we can finish off with Decidueye and basically just kind of clean up the game. That's the strategy here. Again, a little bit heavy on the Pokemon, but at the same time, we can kind of guarantee that we're going to have those rare candies for our Rowlets, and then we don't need to use it at all for like the, Fomantis, Lurantis combination there. So it's really good. This list is playing 1 Ericas and 2 Lilies. I personally think that 2 Ericas and 1 Lilies would be a little bit more correct. I'm a little bit higher on Erica right now. There's a lot of opportunities where I would rather be able to heal up my grass Pokemon before it's fully evolved, because the format is actually a lot quicker than I, kind of expected it to be. You could even slot in a Pokemon Communications in this deck, and I think that would be totally fine as well. So Lurantis Decidueye is very, very good. These cards definitely have great synergies. I just didn't expect that the format, I thought the format would be a little bit too quick for Lurantis to see that much success, but it's actually ending up to be really, really good. So again, we'll have to see. We're really just sort of, blindfolded playing darts right now, trying to just hit the target with a bunch of good combinations. We don't really know how the metagame is going to shape up in terms of, how many, what decks are going to see more play, because that's typically what shapes the metagame. There's a lot of strong decks out there, but depending on what decks are the most played, like in ranked battles and in tournaments, then that's going to shape around, the overall metagame, and then, pave the way for some decks to either kind of make it or break it. So we'll have to see, but Lurantis Decidueye is definitely really, really good, and I just can't stop, playing Decidueye and talking about Decidueye, so there you go. Taking a drink mid-video, and we are not going to edit that out. You know how we do it here on the channel. Next up is going to be Alolan Raichu. So Alolan Raichu is a very splashable card, and I know a lot of people have, found interesting places to include Raichu EX, but I haven't seen too many decks really kind of centered around it. So this is really the top way to build a deck specifically around Alolan Raichu. It does have colorless energy in its psychic attack, so we could realistically use Alolan Raichu in really any deck, and I think it's probably going to be a little bit more common, probably as a tech option in other deck lists that, maybe could use a Electro-type attacker, or things that just struggle against high energy attack cost decks. So Alolan Raichu is a really strong card in those scenarios, but I wanted to showcase a deck that was built all around Alolan Raichu, and this isn't really that bad at all. We have Oricorio, we have Pachirisu, and even the new Tapu Koko, which I'm not necessarily that high on, mainly because it can be good for Dawn strategies, but I mean, realistically, 70 damage for 3 energies isn't much different than 50 damage for 2 energies. So the effect is nice after you attack, you Volt Switch, and you can go into your benched Oricorio, but we also have to find a way to go back into Tapu Koko, and it's just a big process and a lot of setup for us to really only be doing 20 more damage. So I'm not a big believer in Tapu Koko, but again, what is nice is that we can attack and then possibly just go into something else, maybe if it has, more HP or something like that, even if it's not Oricorio. So I like Tapu Koko, but Pachirisu, Oricorio, Tapu Koko, Alolan Raichu all kind of mesh pretty well together in this nice electric toolbox deck. We are playing Red, we're playing Sabrina, we're playing Mars, we're playing Cyrus. We're playing a lot of nice little sort of spread, ancillary kind of additional trainer cards that kind of do a bunch of different stuff. Mars is a card I expect to see more play. A red card kind of does the same thing in some scenarios. I don't know how often a late game Mars is really happening or being that impactful. I suppose it could be impactful for some of these stage 2 decks. So I like Mars, but I think Mars and red card are both definitely really good. Anyway, here is Alolan Raichu. It's definitely good against things like Giratina Darkrai, against Gyarados and other water-type decks, but I just don't necessarily see it as a card that's going to take over the metagame. It's more so a card that is probably going to be really useful in some specific matchups and in some specific deck lists. So anyway, I haven't really showcased a deck around it, so I wanted to include it here in this video. Next up, we have another interesting deck. Now, this deck is not playing any new Pokemon, so it's not necessarily a new deck in that sense, but this combination of cards is kind of new. And again, Greninja, and as I said, we were going to talk about it later, Greninja is a really, really underrated Pokemon in the format now with rare candy. So this is basically Berry, Collapse, Snorlax with Giratina, and then, Greninja with rare candy. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, but one thing's for sure is that all of these cards are kind of independent from each other, and they all sort of can operate without interacting too much and, I guess, sort of clashing with each other in any sense, right? Snorlax can just sit in the active and do really good soaking up damage while we set up the Greninja and the Giratina on the bench, but we could also attack pretty early for 100 damage with Berry, right, on our second turn. We have Pokemon Center Lady, we have Irida because we're playing water energies to further even heal up. We can even attach that water energy directly to Giratina and heal it with Irida, and we have Poison Barb to attach to that Snorlax to again fix some math. So a lot of extra little damage modification going on with this deck list, but it's really, really good. Again, the scenario where your opponent has to go through 2 Snorlaxes or maybe a Snorlax and a Greninja before they have to go through Giratina is again actually really strong. So that's something that we're probably going to see a lot in this format, like I said earlier. Just a lot of these non-EX sort of Pokemon that you would like your opponent to have to deal with while you set up a really strong EX Pokemon on the back line. That really seems to be the showcase of the meta. However, decks like this don't have really the super like explosive ability that some of the EX Pokemon, Stage 2 Pokemon do with Rare Candy. But again, Snorlax is pretty explosive in its own right. So our own sort of fast-paced, sort of high-roll aspect of this deck is getting that Greninja out early because, like I said, the collapse damage from Snorlax plus Water Shuriken's 120, and we're taking a lot of KOs that way. So it's actually a really, really cool deck list, and it did well recently in an online tournament, so I wanted to include it, but I actually think this combination, although really, really interesting, is really good. And again, something that I think we should probably take fairly seriously. If you wanted to play Giratina, but you didn't want to play it with like the old Dark Rice strategy, and if you wanted to still play Rare Candy, this is really the deck that has it all. And in fact, this might be the best scenario for Snorlax and Barry, that combination, to see play in the metagame. This is probably its best option. In fact, I think Snorlax is pretty good in a lot of different scenarios. It can be good with Oricorio, it can be good in Electro-type decks. Snorlax with Barry is just pretty good in general, especially now that we have Rare Candy, so we can kind of comfortably set up some Stage 2 Pokemon to pair with it a little bit more consistently. So pretty funny. It's not a meme. It does kind of look like a meme deck, but I promise you, this is a for real deck list, and it's definitely really, really, really good. Okay, so next up we've got Lycanroc with Rampardos. So in yesterday's video, I did talk about Rampardos. I do think Rampardos is one of the strongest Pokemon in the game with Rare Candy, but I kind of included a deck list version with Lucario, mainly because I think most people were still playing Lucario, and I think that the ability for Rampardos to hit for 150, potentially 170, is just really strong. Again, as time goes on, maybe the new Lycanroc here with the Blood Fang attack might end up actually being the better option here. So Lycanroc's really nice. Rockruff has the Sign of Evolution attack, which allows you to basically, if you're going second, you can just attach an energy to Rockruff and then search your deck for that Lycanroc and directly put it into your hand. That's really strong. You can guarantee going second that you can Blood Fang on your second turn, and it's a strong attack, so it's a Pokemon that's not great going first, but going second, we have the ability here to basically either do 50 damage on our second turn or do 100 damage. And it's cool because it kind of forces your opponent to maybe not evolve, because maybe then they'll have more HP than you. Maybe you could force that, those grass type decks to maybe not attach their Leaf Cape, right? Which again, was going to increase that amount of damage that we're able to do with Lycanroc. So it's really, really strong. And again, Rampardos is just a really strong card in general. We're not playing any Pokemon Communications. You don't really need to, because we're able to kind of thin those Lycanroc out of our deck with Rockruff. And again, we are guaranteed to start with Rockruff because it's technically the only basic Pokemon in our deck. One thing I'll note, because some people keep asking me in the comments, Rare Candy does work with fossils. So just a quick explanation, fossil cards are item cards when they're in your hand or in your deck. However, once you play them onto your bench, they are therefore, from that point on, treated like basic Pokemon. You can't retreat with them, however, you have to like discard them to, of course, get rid of them because they can't retreat. So you can discard them. Yeah, so that's how fossils work, but Rare Candy does work with the fossil. So you can Rare Candy the Skull Fossil into Rampardos. Really, really strong. All of these Pokemon, low energy in their attack cost. We can comfortably attach that second energy to Lycanroc really no matter what, because we know that if we do have Rampardos set up, we only need one energy to attach with it. We've got Guzma, we've got Cyrus, we've got Mars, we've got Red and Sabrina. I think Cyrus and Sabrina is pretty good in this list overall. There are scenarios where Lycanroc just hits for 50, and then sets up a KO, but our opponent maybe retreats. So Sabrina and Cyrus are all really, really good in a deck list like this, for sure. That's a little bit more aggressive and fast-paced. And Guzma as well is going to be really just kind of here in the game, specifically for the Solgaleo and Skarmory decks. However, it can really be good against some of those grass decks that are playing Leafy Cape or Leaf Cape. So Guzma's a really good card. I think it's probably going to see a little bit of play in deck lists that have room for it, at least early on in this format, while Solgaleo and Skarmory is kind of taking over the metagame. So really, really cool. By the way, I did include it in this video, spoiler, but there is a Solgaleo deck that instead of Skarmory, you're playing basically the new Excadrill, and that kind of makes you immune more so to Guzma to turn off, like you're not playing Skarmory, so you don't have to play all of the tool cards. And then, you know, Excadrill is a stage 1 Pokemon with more HP, but it does 50 damage. I haven't included the deck list in this video, but just know that you can play Solgaleo with Excadrill, and I have seen that, and it is actually a pretty good quality deck list. So yeah, anyway, okay, we're moving on. But there's Lycanroc and Rampardos. It could end up being better than Lucario because Lycanroc is a little bit more of a volatile attacking option, whereas Lucario is more of a support option, but definitely still really, really good. Again, we'll have to see. It's still so early. It'll take a lot of time, probably 2, maybe even 3 weeks before we really figure out what the best versions of all of these decks are. So there you go. Okay, so next up, I'm going to take a drink of water again real quick. No editing. No editing at all. You're going to have to watch that. The next one is going to be Lunala box. Lunala Psychic Toolbox. This deck is actually really good. I think we've all kind of lost to a deck like this before. Again, another deck that a lot of people were asking me about. Lunala is really, really cool and really strong. I think originally people didn't think that it would be that good, and perhaps it's not as good as Solgaleo, but its effect is actually really, really strong. So we're playing 2 Cosmog, 2 Lunala, 2 Giratina, 1 Mewtwo, and 1 Tapu Lele. The whole idea with this deck list, and I'm going to say this completely outright, the whole idea here is that we just sort of set up for like 2 or 3 turns. We get our Giratina filled with energies. We can actually, because we're playing Psychic Energies, if we lead off with Giratina, we could potentially just kind of double up on Giratina turn after turn and attack for 130 on turn 3. That's definitely a possibility. But basically with Leaf and do we play X-Speed? We don't, but it's totally fine. The idea here is that we're able to basically just retreat out with our Pokemon and then go into a different Psychic Pokemon, move all of those energies to that new Pokemon, and then repeat, and hopefully shuffle through a bunch of high HP EX Pokemon and hope that our opponent basically doesn't have like Cyrus or isn't playing like Decidueye, things like that. It's actually a lot better than you would think. So Mewtwo can hit for 150, but you discard energies. Giratina hits for 130. However, you take some damage, and then Lunala does just 100, but there's no drawback to it. So you have all of these different options, and you have Tapu Lele as well. It's a really, really fun card. Cosmog as well. Like any energy you're attaching to any of your Pokemon is not wasted energy because you can always move it to whatever's in the active spot. And that's the big upside to a deck like this, is that as long as you get that Lunala EX out onto the board, it doesn't really matter what Pokemon we're committing energies to, and it really turns Giratina into this really funny sort of energy battery. This is a good deck list. It's just a little bit inconsistent, and again, it does have its weaknesses. You are very susceptible to things like Cyrus, like Decidueye, which is still seeing a good amount of play. Also, some of those like Meowscarada decks do pretty well here because we're just hitting a lot of damage against most of these Pokemon, and none of them can one-hit KO Meowscarada, especially with Cape. So it's got some downsides, but it is certainly a really strong deck list, and it's actually a lot better than I really anticipated it being. I didn't have the vision when I saw Lunala of like how we would really be playing a deck like this. You would really like some of these Pokemon to have less of a retreat cost, because like Mewtwo and Giratina do have a retreat cost of 2, so we're kind of reliant on Leaf, but to be fair, we only need to do it once or twice in the game, so pretty likely that we have Leaf, and that's really the whole idea with this deck. It's pretty funny, but if you've played against it, you know just how strong it actually can be. There's a lot of Pokemon that, you could be forced to deal with, and that certainly is kind of tough, especially if they just keep kind of cycling through a new Pokemon with full HP every turn. So it's actually a really, really good deck. It's kind of a meme deck, but it's also like a lot better than like a meme deck would be. So it's kind of on that fringe. I don't know. I don't really think it'll end up being like super high in the metagame, but it is actually really good. It's good enough for me to mention in today's video. So here you go. Okay. Next up, we've got Wishiwashi, and Wishiwashi is another one that some people have been talking about. I didn't really spend too much time like talking about it. I thought this card was strong. Again, a bit of a gimmicky strategy, but overall, this is going to be kind of your new high roll Misty deck. That's really what this is. This is like the new like 18 trainer, 16 trainer like Palkia or Articuno decks. Wishiwashi EX really kind of fits that bill, so again, we're a little bit reliant here on flipping in early Misties and getting a couple of energies, but we're also reliant on filling our bench with Wishiwashi so that we can then do the full damage. But a basic water Pokemon with 170 HP is absolutely crazy. That is wild. There's no two ways about it. With Giant Cape, we're at 190. We have Irida and we have Red to even boost that damage. We've got, Misties, Leaf, Sabrinas. We got a whole bunch of stuff that's really, really good. So again, it can be a bit awkward. Like, we're very much reliant on filling our board with basic Pokemon, and we don't have any way to find basic Pokemon other than Pokeball. We are playing Fishing Net, but that's if they're in the discard pile to put them back on our bench. Really good card. It's a card specifically made for Wishiwashi. But again, this is a little bit more of a high roll strategy. We have to hopefully lead off with Wishiwashi EX. We got to hopefully fill up our bench, hopefully flip a heads or two with Misties, and then just roll your opponent. That's it. That's really the deck list. However, this deck does lose to Oricorio, and there's going to be some decks in this video that do just lose to Oricorio because, you know, that's just sort of the nature of the game now. You can't always have a deck that just can beat Oricorio. Theoretically speaking, you know, I guess we could just sort of survive long enough and then hope our opponent just, you know, quits because they get bored. But now on paper, we have no way of beating Oricorio, and that's certainly the case for sure. We could look back, like, let's see. This deck list certainly would struggle against Oricorio. We do have Tapu Lele, but that's probably not your best bet. This deck, we're good. This deck, we're definitely good. This list here plays Oricorio, and then if you go back, Lurantis could beat Oricorio. This deck list totally fine against Oricorio, and then I guess so is Incineroar. So again, like some of these decks just are going to struggle. That's just the nature of it. But this list in particular just can't beat Oricorio, and the problem is that we can't play any other Pokemon, because then we're taking away from the overall Wishiwashi strategy. So that's sort of the downside with Wishiwashi, apparently, I mean, at first glance, is that it's really strong. Again, sort of a little high roll deck. I don't think it's going to really pop off. It could. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you just miss and never play Oricorio Electric and you just go crazy. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's something that's going to take over the metagame, but it's certainly a good enough deck for us to mention, and is certainly one of the best new decks to come with the new expansion here. Okay. Next up is something that also is something we have to actually, again, take seriously. Some of these decks may seem like they're not like super valuable or anything like super good, but no, like this is a really good deck. This is Banette with Mewtwo EX. This is a list that's really, really good. Banette is super, super interesting. So it's a stage 1 Pokemon, 1 energy in its attack cost, really relevant. We can attack on our second turn going first. It's got Night Bind. It only does 30 damage, but basically it makes it so our opponent cannot attach energies from their energy zone to their active Pokemon. What's really funny about this is it actually blocks all of the energy acceleration effects in Pokemon Pocket, because they actually also, in the wording of all of those cards and effects and stuff, it says attach the energy from your energy zone. So like Misties, this doesn't work with, unless it says like discard pile, like Volkner, but like truthfully, mostly everything that accelerates energies in this game gets blocked by this Night Bind effect. And as long as that Pokemon's in the active spot, there's literally like no way your opponent can get energies onto that Pokemon unless, again, they're using like Volkner or some way to get energies from the discard pile, which is really interesting. So Banette is actually pretty strong. That might seem niche to you, but the whole thing here is that if they don't have a way to retreat out, if they don't have energies, then you kind of just like automatically locked in a KO. So you can guarantee that at least one of those Pokemon is getting KO'd. And again, if they're not playing X-Speed and if they're not playing Leaf, then you can actually just hang out all day. You could literally just sort of attack, and then, you know, you can hopefully, like, I mean, they're going to get KO'd eventually, but that gives you a ton of time to then set up Mewtwo EX, which, again, is a Pokemon that can take one-hit KO. So the whole idea here is that we go into Banette, we lock in a Pokemon, we stall for a turn, get a KO with Banette, maybe we go into, like, an Oricorio or a Tapu Lele after that, or maybe even another Banette, who knows? And then we do the process all over again, and then we finish up with Mewtwo. So again, similar to what I was saying again earlier, some of these really strange and funny and really quality non-EX Pokemon combinations and strategies that we then pair with a really strong EX Pokemon. In this case, it's just Mewtwo, and it's not so much like an EX, like stage 2 Pokemon. But yeah, 2 Team Rocket Grunt as well. Again, really, really funny. So if we do discard the energies with Team Rocket Grunt and we get a Pokemon in Night Bind, then all of a sudden we've just locked in another Pokemon. So the strategy here seems, again, probably a little bit like of a meme, maybe a little bit funny, but it's a lot better than you would think. Like this, again, is maybe not like a top deck of the format, but it is something that's really, really good. And Banette's a really strong card, and this includes some of the other new Psychic cards in the game, like Tapu Lele, Oricorio, and of course Mewtwo, which we like to talk about all the time. I like Mewtwo for sure. So here it is. Mewtwo, very, very good, very strong with Banette. Yeah, I don't have too much else to say about it. Just a really kind of support card, or not support, but like a control deck with Team Rocket Grunt, with Guzma, with Mars, and then with Banette. Really, really, really funny. Just a really fun deck to play, and it's a lot better than, you know, some people honestly probably give it credit for. If you try this out, you're probably gonna have some success. And that's what this video is about, truthfully. I wanted to make a video about like all of the new decks that are really good, but maybe not considered like, you know, super high like meta viability right now. And like I said, maybe some of these will rise up and play, but there's a lot of really strong decks that maybe some people are wondering, like, is this really great? Is this like super meta? It's hard to tell right now. Like some things could fall in and out of the metagame early on, but one thing's for sure is there's a lot of really good brand new decks, and I just wanted to go ahead and cover most of them here in this video and in yesterday's video, which you should watch if you haven't already. Okay, so lastly, we've got Meowscarada with Tsareena. So I don't know if I spent too much time talking about Tsareena yet, but Tsareena is a really, really strong card here. So it's a stage 2 Pokemon with only 1 energy in its attack cost. It has the 3-kick combo attack. You flip 3 coins and you do 50 damage for each head. So yeah, basically on our second turn, going first or second, we can go ahead, Rare Candy up into Tsareena, 130 HP, that's 160 with Leaf Cape, and we can potentially hit for 150. Now on average, this attack does 75, right? Because you do 0, 50, 100, and 150. So I believe if you average those out, that comes to about 75. Maybe I'm wrong, actually. Maybe it's like 100. No, it's not. It's 75, I'm pretty sure. I don't know, actually. You do the math. You let me know. But you're not always doing 150. You're more oftentimes doing 50 or 100, sometimes 0. So it's a little bit inconsistent. These coin flip cards are a little bit suspect, but the whole idea here is that we can put tremendous early pressure on. And then Meowscarada, of course, is just a really, really good Pokemon. So this is different than pairing Meowscarada with Decidueye, but the overall list is very similar to a Decidueye and Meowscarada deck. It's just instead of Decidueye, it's Tsareena. And the main upside to doing that, although I don't think Tsareena is as good of a Pokemon as Decidueye, this does give us flexibility in which Pokemon we lead off with. So in a scenario where you are playing Decidueye Meowscarada, you're kind of forced into, like, you know, using Decidueye, and then, you know, the next time your opponent gets a KO, they win because they've already taken 2 prize cards. Whereas when you're playing Tsareena, it's also a non-EX Pokemon. So you could go Tsareena into Meowscarada, you could go Meowscarada into Tsareena, into Meowscarada, or you could go Meowscarada, and then Tsareena. So it's a little bit more flexible in the order of which we're using those Pokemon. So you got to keep that in mind, and Tsareena is a very consistent attacker, of course, with only 1 energy in its attack cost. So I really like it. In fact, I may actually see Tsareena ending up being the better partner to Meowscarada than Decidueye, which is really interesting. I said it earlier, we also have Lurantis, and we have Decidueye just really, really good on its own, but we'll have to see. There's so many really strong Grass-type Pokemon with Leaf Cape, with Erica's, there's a lot of support with Rare Candy. So we really just have to see what the best sort of combinations end up being and what the most successful versions of these deck lists end up being. But one thing is for sure is that a lot of these Grass-type cards are really, really strong, and I expect them to see a lot of play. So here it is. Tsareena's really good, and I think the best way to play it is with Meowscarada. You could change things around. You could go like double Tsareena and then a single Meowscarada, but truthfully, I think that the Sprigatito lead is probably better and overall more consistent for the deck because Cry for Help, it thins out your cards. So it's a little bit better, and again, I just think that this combination kind of works a little bit better. The whole Meowscarada line is so good. I think it's really well positioned in the format right now. So yeah, anyway, there it is, guys, and that's it. I believe that was 10 decks. I could have counted wrong, but those are 10 brand new decks that are all really awesome, just really, really good. And I wanted to make a video covering all of the decks that I thought were really, really new and great, but just, you know, didn't make it into the cut in yesterday's video. Again, don't really, you know, take too much about it. Like, I do think the decks yesterday are at the top of the metagame, but all of the decks in this video might find their way, in like a tier list setting right next to a lot of the decks that we talked about yesterday. It's just a little bit early to tell, so, keep that in mind. But anyway, let's wrap up this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We've gained a bunch of subscribers recently, and the support has been incredible over the last few days, so hopefully you guys have been enjoying the content, and you guys can stick around and hopefully enjoy the content that we have got coming up. So there you go. Also, the Ursa Days tournament is this weekend. Ranked mode is going on right now. Tomorrow I probably will have another video, but I might also go live with some ranked battles tomorrow, so should be pretty fun. Anyway, there it is. Let's wrap it up here, guys. All right, peace out. Have a good one. Bye.